Let's look now at WSS versus MOSS. WSS is the free component. It comes with Windows Server 2003. It is a complete package in and of itself. You can do team collaboration, create your own collaboration sites, work on projects together, and that includes document libraries where you can do different versioning of the documents. You can set alerts to be alerted if there is changes to any of the web pages of the document libraries. There's some simplified management built in, and of course it is tightly integrated into the Office tools and to Windows security. Now that's the free version. If you pay extra from Microsoft, you can get something called MOSS, the successor to something that used to be called SharePoint Portal Server, or SPS. Now MOSS is designed more for the entire enterprise. It ties together all the WSS individual sites at the enterprise level, so there's a single point of entry to those. That it also supports doing the individual users, giving individual users these My Sites automatically, and those users can be derived from Active Directory users. And it also, very importantly, builds an index or search index throughout all of the WSS sites, so your search engine can actually crawl, through these sites daily and build an index that'll go to all the WSS sites you may have. Now, add to that, there's also support for doing different business forms to implement your workflow solutions you may have, things like payroll, reimbursements, time cards, things like that. And also, of course, MOSS has very good tools for building reports to report key performance indicators of various types. Now, as I mentioned, MOSS is the newer version of something called SharePoint Portal Server. Let's discuss just briefly what that is. SharePoint Portal Server came out with the original version, or I should say version 2 of SharePoint around 2003. The main features of the newer version of this, of MOSS, or the newer version that is called MOSS, is that there is now the ability to publish spreadsheets on the web. That was something that really wasn't handled particularly well in earlier versions of SharePoint. Now, through DataLink, through Excel services, you can actually publish web pages that embed Excel spreadsheets. Now, there's also very tightly integrated into the latest version of Office, which the older version of SharePoint will not have. You'll find the forms management superior, also things like mobile device support and wiki and email integration is much better in the newer version. Now remember, that's a comparison between the current MOSS and the previous SPS, which is the earlier version of SharePoint. Now let's compare overall WSS versus the MOSS layer. So if all you have is the Windows SharePoint Services 2.0, this is the one circa around 2003, then you can, of course, use the earlier version of RT Web Parts. That's the 1.x version. And if in addition to that free version, if you have the SharePoint Portal Server, the SPS, then you can do things over and above that for kind of enterprise integration. There's nothing specific in RT Web Parts that you can't do if you don't have the this version, the SPS. You can do everything just with the free version. Now, if you look at our current offerings, if you've got Windows SharePoint Services 3.0, you will need that in order to run the current version of RT Web Parts. Now, if you've gone the extra mile and bought MOSS as well, you get better integration, because now you can use, in addition to all the the new RT Web Parts 2.0 stuff, you can use DataLink for Excel services. That is something that supports putting DataLink data, report information from Pi server and other data sources into a spreadsheet that's then using Excel services shown on a web page. And that is something that is only going to be available to you if you have MOSS. Well, so far about the most significant thing I've said about the relationship between Microsoft Office SharePoint Server and Windows SharePoint Services is that Windows SharePoint Services is free and MOSS isn't. But there's a lot more to it than that. this goes back to when Windows SharePoint Services was first introduced, and from Windows SharePoint Services, from the core technologies in Windows SharePoint Services, Microsoft built something called SharePoint Portal Server, or SPS for short. Now, the current version is Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, the successor to SPS. The difference between the two is, well, SPS and MOSS in turn have been built using WSS technology. So all the things that you see, all the different websites built out of on a MOSS site, all the different topics you'd find within a MOSS website, they're all built out of WSS fundamentals, the web parts, the document libraries, things like that. That's all WSS technology. What MOSS brings and what SPS brings, of course, is those things that I mentioned before, the indexing capabilities, etc. Now, from a practical point of view, what you typically find is navigation goes from a MOSS site down to individual WSS sites and web part pages. So if we look at our example, here's my MOSS site. And within this MOSS site, I have, and you can see this is MOSS. This is the typical user interface you'd see associated with Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. It's got the My Site availability, which is what MOSS brings. But within that, you see individual web part pages. And these individual web part pages, we've used a couple of these for our exercises today, or we're using them in this CBT. This is where you'd find the actual WSS page or a web part page, and typically that's what you would find within an organization. Is the MOSS sites are the ones at the higher level, the ones that are meant to be aggregators of all the the larger topics. And then when you get down to individual collaboration or individual document working with individual documents across organizations, you typically find those things organized on the WSS web part pages.